boas, rainbow flags, the trans flag are all part of what makes Pride so evident to so many of us. We recognize the colors, all 6 of them. We recognize the flags. But tonight we're going to talk about World Pride 2019, 50 years of having Pride festivities all over the world. This year it's in Manhattan. But in Barrie, we're not sure what's happening in Barrie, but Keegan Hobson is here tonight from Fierté Simcoe Pride to talk about World Pride, Canada Pride, and what's happening in Barrie. Well, tonight I have a very special guest. And I know I've said it many, many times. All my guests are special, but this guest is extremely special. I've known him for a while. Right pronoun, is it?
Yes.
I hope.
Yes, you're right. Hi.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Wow. I like the hair.
Thank you.
Now, okay, that's a lot of hair.
It is a lot of hair. It's half a head of a lot of hair.
Wow. And how much maintenance is that?
Not really. It's wash and go.
Wash and go.
Yeah.
Good. You're looking good.
Thank you.
You've had a busy 2018.
Yeah, it was very, very hectic, filled with lots.
Well, and because the whole program tonight is about, well, mostly about Pride, Pride committees and World Pride and what's happening, not just World Pride, but what's happening in Barrie as well.
Absolutely.
Simcoe County, because you're with the Fierté Simcoe Pride.
Yes.
It's so easy just to say Simcoe Pride, but it is actually Fierté Simcoe Pride.
Yeah, it's recognizing our connection to Canada Pride.
Right.
Yes.
And also your attachment to the Francophone community as well, because I think there are a few Francophone LGBTQ2 folk around.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure, but I think there must be.
There absolutely is. We have plenty of members of that community here who utilize services.
Yeah. So just a bit about yourself. So you've been involved in the community for a number of years.
Yeah, I first got seriously involved when I was about 15 years old, and I joined the board of Simcoe Pride in 2016.
So that's going on 3 years.
Yeah, for solid organization, yeah.
Yeah. And how many members are you? Because there's quite a few.
We're kind of in a weird space where we're right before an AGM, so we're figuring out who's staying and who's deciding to step back. But so far, I think we're sitting solidly with about 4 or 5 members on our board, which is pretty good for us.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you have a fairly large membership because you're all of Simcoe, right?
Yeah. We cover the entirety of Simcoe County. So it's a lot of townships and municipalities to be working alongside.
Yeah, and I think last year at during Pride Week and Simcoe, no, you're in August, right?
Yeah, we start the end of July and we go into the middle of August.
And I forget what the number of counties, not counties, but the number of towns or cities that Simcoe had flag raising in.
22, I want to say, 22 townships, 22, 24. I'm really bad with numbers, but it's somewhere in there, it's right there.
It was about 2 dozen.
Yeah, absolutely. We've raised flags or had proclamations from every single one of our townships.
So both the trans flag and the rainbow flag?
Yeah, at every single township.
Wow.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. It was the first year we'd accomplished that, and it was a really big one for us.
So you're a young man. How many folks are you seeing now with like your generation supporting the work that Fierté Simcoe Pride is doing? Like, do you have a lot of younger folks coming on board?
I think to a degree that living in a rural area, it's always hard to get young folks to stay on board, because I think that most of us, if not all of us, have that drive of, I need to get out to the big city, I need to get to where I'll see people like me. And so I think youth engagement is something that we've always struggled with. We're doing pretty good. We have a lot more youth engagement than we have in previous years. A lot of youth coming out to events, asking us to host events, sharing spaces, messaging our Facebook page, which is really good. But it's definitely a little tougher to get youth to join boards.
Join boards, but what about showing up at events? Do you find a lot of interest in the events? Because I know in December you had a community dinner.
Yes.
Because I went to it.
Yes.
Great food.
Oh, thank you. It was cooked in my kitchen.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because the space that it was held in was the Kiwanis Club at 80 Bradford.
Yeah.
And there was no stove there.
No.
There was a fridge, sink, but no stove. So,
Unexpectedly, no stove.
but yet you threw a huge turkey dinner with mashed potatoes and I don't know, all sorts
Everything. We had everything. It was amazing. Yeah, my family pulled together for that one. Honestly, we were up at like 6 a.m. cooking turkeys in 3 different houses, cooking potatoes. We had like the kids peeling on the floor in their pajamas as soon as they woke up. It was a moment, a really good moment.
Yeah, yeah. And your mother and her partner were quite active in that. And so was was it your grandmother?
My grandmother,
your
yeah.
grandmother.
Yeah.
Your grandmother. You've got your grandmother involved.
She just messaged me. She's like, by the way, I'm sitting in the Kiwanis Club waiting for you. I was like, we're not supposed to be there for 2 hours. She's like, well, I'm here cleaning. Yeah, it was a family effort. It was sweet.
Yeah, yeah. And you had card games, because I remember playing Crazy Eights or something, and Crib, and...
Yeah, Munchkin, board games.
Yeah, and Keenan Alwyn, the Ward 2 councillor, was there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Newly
Helped serve
elected?
pie.
Pardon?
He helped serve pie.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Keegan.
Thank you.
Keenan, not Keegan, Keenan. Boy, your names are very close.
They are. We've been confused a few times, and it's always interesting.
Somebody said, who's on your show? I said, Keenan. No, not Keenan. Keegan, not Keenan. Keegan. Right, right. So that was a good effort, and it was well received, and I think it would look like a full house.
It did. It was pretty packed in there, and most of the food went, and everything that wasn't donated got brought down to the David Busby Center the following day. So it worked out.
That's nice. So events like that, because just before we went on air, you were telling me that you heard from some folks that said that kind of thing should happen more often. And
yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of feedback from community members who really appreciated the space being held, who really loved seeing organizations working together to provide spaces. And I think the connection to the David Busby Center at the end just kind of put that over the top. Like, it was very much local community coming together to provide space for local community, and I think that's really powerful.
I have some questions, because I know that I sent them to you, but anyway. So the whole purpose, and some of this, what the show is about too, is about WorldPride is happening in 2019, and it's been 50 years since the Stonewall riots in Greenwich Village in Manhattan happened. We can talk about that a little later, but Pride committees came, in your sense, how needed are they right now in 2019? Do you still see a place for them within community?
I think it's a hard question.
I'm not putting you on the spot.
No. I was thinking about this last night when you sent me. I was like, oh, okay, so we're just getting philosophical. No, honestly, I think there both is and isn't a need. I think there is a need in the sense that Pride movements have the capacity to reach channels that individuals may otherwise not. But I realize that regardless of whether or not organized movements like a Pride group is happening, that individuals are going to step forward and provide for community, because they always have. That's what we've always done. That's like the flagship of our community, is the fact that we are willing to step forward and create space where we need to create it. And even now, there are lots of Pride groups in Barrie itself doing lots of good work, and in Simcoe County, Barrie Pride, Fierté Simcoe, the Gilbert Center does Pride organizational work. And there are still individuals who are doing groundwork quietly outside of these organizations, and they're reaching folks that we may otherwise not be able to. So yeah, I think it's a hard question. I think there will always be a need for Pride organizations, but I think that even if we were to go under that, the movement would still continue in the ways it needs to.
So Pride is Pride committees are there to promote, to help folks who don't understand what's going on within the LGBT community, to give them some kind of an understanding, and I see that. What about the trend that we see south of us in the U.S. and in countries abroad, like Brazil, for example, in South America, who they have a new president who's almost like anti-LGBT. I think he was quoted as saying, "If my son was gay, I'd rather see him get hit by a car than, that kind of thing." Do you see that kind of thing creeping into Canadian politics at all, or even local, provincial politics? Even though Canada's had same-sex marriage since 2011, I think, or something like that.
Yeah,
almost.
a while now.
2011, 2010, something like that.
Years. I think it would be really naive of me to ever assume that LGBTQ2 rights are safe as long as there are authoritative figures who are basing their entire platform on taking away our rights.
Right.
And I also think it's really like, it would be ignorant of me to ignore the fact that we still have these human rights violations within Canada. Whether or not we have marriage equality, like, yeah, that's great. We can get married, that's awesome, but the reality is that that's still fitting us into that very heteronormative expectation of relationships, and it's not enough, you know?
Right.
It's not where we need to end. There are still trans people facing discrimination in the workplace and in healthcare settings. There are still marginalized and racialized people facing violence. There are still so many issues within our communities that I think are intrinsically linked to human rights issues that we don't identify as such. I would like to hope that larger laws wouldn't come into place, but again, I think it's naive to assume that they couldn't.
Well, even a couple of months ago when Barrie opened up the upper deck, lakeside upper deck, just that whole drama that centered around it. I mean, that was 2018, that a gay bar was opening up in Barrie.
Not the first one either.
Not the first one, exactly. Like, there's been gay bars in Barrie for many, many years.
Before I was thought of, there's been gay bars in Barrie.
Yeah, before you were even born.
Literally.
Exactly. And now that's died down. I don't know how well the lakeside upper deck is doing, but that's an indicative of, wow, and people were shocked that there were protests, or apparently were going to be protests. Now we don't even know if it was a public. But anyway, having said all that, you would have thought that would have been well, so what? There's a gay bar opening up in town.
Yeah, but I think, like, especially youth and marginalized members of our community know that that's not the case. Like, people are going to rile up about stuff like that, and they are going to get loud, and they are going to react. And unfortunately, especially in spaces like Barrie, where we are slightly conservative-leaning space. I don't want to say conservative because we're not quite, but I want to say conservative-leaning. Yeah, I think that you always have to be prepared for those issues, because we have it with pride parades, we have it with throwing events, we have it with organizations within Simcoe still facing issues because of people.
We had Keenan Allen on our show in December, I think, of 2018, just before he was elected. He was elected already, but just before he actually got sworn in as a city councillor. He was on the show, and somebody saw him on the show, watched this show, thank you for watching, but said, oh my goodness, there's a gay councillor on city council in Barrie, and they were sort of like, oh my goodness.
Oh God.
Oh my goodness. So kudos for him for getting elected, and he's downtown Ward 2. But that's a positive in terms of bringing, and not because he's a gay guy, but because he has thinking, from my perspective, that is relevant to what's happening in Barrie today, be it the LGBTQ issues, or be it any other issues that the downtown is facing, like the opioid crisis, and there might be, I think they're not called consumption treatment services in the downtown area, and people are all up in arms, and I know Keenan is an ally for that, because this is where a lot of injection drug use is happening in the downtown core. But anyway, so we see it changing a little bit, to your point, that it's not there yet.
Yeah.
But the province of Ontario, up until just recently, had a premier who was Kathleen Wynne. When she was premier, she was from the LGBT community, and federally we've had others that are there. So it might be changing. It could be a future. We could be looking at a future premier right here. You know, who knows? Because you're a bit of an activist, right?
Not so much in the politics side of things,
but
though.
you are an activist.
Yeah, I guess so. I like to get involved.
Your bio says you are.
yeah. I like to get involved, and I like to put myself in situations where that can be useful. But yeah.
And I think being articulate and expressing a point of view that is not necessarily overly aggressive, has some pride committees tend to be a little political. Do you think do you think there's room for pride committees to be political?
I think there is a need for pride communities and for pride organizations to be political. And I also think that there's a need for pride organizations to be focused on partying. I think that regardless of where an organization's interests lie, that they are servicing our community from different aspects. Because the reality is we need to work on the political front. We need people hitting the ground. We need people like Keenan who are going to push for the rights of folks who need that. And we need people who are going to push at higher levels. And we also need a party, because as we all know, it gets tiring fighting a state that doesn't really want you there. And so it's nice to be able to go out and celebrate with other people in your community.
Toronto Pride has had controversy over the years with the police marching and or not marching, and I still don't know what the outcome is. I don't think they are marching in. They could march, but not in uniform.
I think they are now.
They are now, and in Barrie they do, because in Pride 2018 in June there was a police float or cars or.
Yes.
And I think they had the rainbow flag on one of the police cruisers.
Most likely.
You know, so in Barrie that's not the case.
No, not here.
Not here. So that's a good point. But do you see Fierté Simcoe Pride becoming political in terms of posting things, giving opinion on municipal politics in terms of, you know, well, why can't we do this or why can't we do that, or?
So as an organization, we try really hard to be nonpartisan, like we are. We will not align ourselves with any party. We share details that are relevant to our demographic on our Facebook page as they come up. I'm sure, like, as individual board members, obviously we all have our own political configurations, but we try to keep that out. And like, yeah, we definitely are stepping forward with politics. Just recently, we released a survey asking about how our communities feel having police and military in uniform in parades and at events. Just because we have really good ties with base Borden, and there has been a lot of issues around police presence in Pride and whether or not they should come with uniforms with weapons, XXX. And so I think, yes, we are political, but we try mostly to gather information to make sure we're minimizing the harm to people in the spaces that we're providing, not so much to like push an agenda.
I think I really appreciate the fact that I think Pride organizations, from my perspective, need to be nonpartisan, because we don't know who's going to be in. We don't know who's going to be sitting at City Council. No. We don't know who's going to be sitting in the Premier's office from one election to the next. You know, so we need to be careful, because our allies are very important.
They are.
I think, they are. I know they are. And so being seen as nonpartisan, I think is a good position in terms of building relationships with those that aren't allies that could be allies.
Yeah, it is. It definitely does. It offers that, like, oh, look, we're not aligning with any political party that you hate, to give us more reasons to conflict, right? But.
Yeah, and like anything else, it's messaging that has to be carefully crafted in terms of trying not to offend people, but yet not diminishing the message, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So you're at Georgian.
I'm at Ryerson.
No, sorry. My bad. Ryerson.
I was at Georgian.
You were at Georgian.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So at Ryerson, are you at Ryerson? You're active there.
Not so much, truthfully.
Not so much.
I don't live in Barrie. Obviously, I'm living in. I live in Barrie. Obviously, I'm not living in Toronto right now, so it's a little hard to commute the 3 hours a day every day to get involved.
Yeah.
I've been there supporting initiatives, but more so my focus is on my home community here, because there's lots of good people holding down the front at Ryerson.
Good.
Yeah.
And you bring. So how do you see Simcoe Pride, Fierté Simcoe Pride? I never know. It's good to say the whole name, because that is the name.
We say FSP.
FSP.
Yep.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So do you see FSP taking, because this is 2019, do you see your organization taking any new direction that you didn't do in previous years that you might be doing in 2019? And by that I mean, do you see the Simcoe Pride, FSP, going in a direction that a more activist role perhaps than in previous years?
I think we're definitely stepping into that direction, and there are definitely individuals within the organization, myself included. I think anyone who knows me knows that I'm pretty rampant on that front, that we are stepping into those directions, but I don't know that it will ever be aggressively. I think that our focus will always be providing for our community the best we can, creating spaces within Simcoe County, because that's so needed. But we definitely have a lot of interesting things that we're hoping to do in 2019 that align with our theme for the year, which is our history, our future. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Our history, our future. So history of the LGBT community within Simcoe?
Within Simcoe and the world, and just honoring our history.
So not just here, but generally across the globe. What is the history and how it started? Because we want to talk about, certainly about that in the fact that 2019 is the 50 years of the, like I mentioned earlier in the show, 50 years of since the Stonewall riots, which we can talk about before you were born. I was born, but you weren't there.
I wasn't quite there.
You weren't quite there. So our history, our future. So how do you lay that out in terms of putting that message out to within Simcoe County?
Every year we have that be the theme of all of our events. So our 5th annual Simcoe County Pride's Award Gala will be themed after our history, our future, and remembering that we're hoping to host some events where we can hopefully show the roughly 35 years of LGBTQ organizing in Simcoe County.
Right.
Because there isn't really any way to really look at that. It's really hard to track down that information. And essentially just bringing up our history and talking about the folks who have gotten us here, the ways in which we've landed in these positions, and remembering our ancestors along the way.
I think it's important that we keep that messaging because it tends to get lost if it's not out there, and I commend the FSP for doing that. And I think your awards gala is another way of highlighting, because it's usually quite well attended. I've been to one or two of them already.
Yeah, they're one of our biggest attended events of the year.
And it's attended by a variety of sectors, not just the LGBTQ community, because I know Base Borden is there, and they have a Pride committee.
Yes, they do. Borden Pride, yeah.
Borden Pride, and they're very active.
Oh yeah, apparently they've been doing some really, really great work out there too.
So that's a good thing to align yourself with. And how is your work with other Pride committees? I know there's Barrie Pride, there's Muskoka Pride, there's, I don't know, how Georgian Pride.
Georgian Pride, yeah.
So there's a lot of them, but
there's a lot of Pride organizations, which I mean is great. It's awesome that we have so many people that want to step forward and do that work in these communities. We work alongside the majority of other Pride organizations. It's a little harder to work with Muskoka because they're so far north, but we have in the past, and I'm sure we will again. And we work with Georgian pretty routinely. And
Georgian is strictly for Georgian campuses.
They focus strictly on like Georgian campus work, but they definitely do outreach in other places as well. We definitely work alongside all of those organizations. We've done work with Barrie Pride as well in the past. Hopefully we will in the future.
Right. And Pride committees, one might say, why are there so many? But different focuses, but yet working all together, which is good. So Muskoka Pride is what, like Bracebridge, Gravenhurst, Huntsville?
Yeah, up in that area. I don't know the entire expansion, but yes, it expands across what we would consider like Cottage Country, Muskoka. They go out to Bala, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so but you're county-wide.
Yeah, we are Simcoe County-wide, yes.
But you could still come into Barrie and do things in Barrie and not. So because over the years, I remember hearing from friends about the 519 in Toronto and the Toronto Pride and the drama and everybody said, working with the gays, there's nothing but drama. Of
course.
But there's drama in a lot of organizations.
Everywhere.
How do you address drama when you see it or when you somehow get dragged into it?
So I agree with you that I don't know that Pride organizations have any more drama than any other group of people working intimately together on something they're very passionate about because they're members of themselves. But I don't know, I'm either lucky or blind to it that I haven't been personally involved in a lot of drama. When I have seen it, I find that it's usually not even about Pride, it's usually personal things that have come into that workplace. And I don't know, I've seen it crash and burn, and I've seen it go really, really well, and I've seen really new alliances come out of it. I think the best thing that we can do is realize that we're all people, and most of us are doing this on a volunteer basis. Out of like the goodness of our hearts and the fact that we want to serve our communities, and that we're not on different pages. We're not as different as we would like to think we are, whether we focus on partying or politics. We're all here to make sure that our community has what they need.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right that any kind of passionate endeavor is going to cause a bit of drama because it speaks from the heart and not so much. It tries to speak from the brain, but a little bit more from the heart.
No, it's you're so deeply involved in what you're doing in the events you're providing. How could you not get upset if something doesn't work out or whatever?
And so many of us might not realize, but there is still stigma and discrimination within, even within Barrie.
Oh, absolutely.
And within Simcoe County towards the LGBT community. I'm not saying everywhere, but I've been into a few bars in town here that people look twice at you and say, "Oh, aren't you in the wrong place?" And going,
"Oh, yeah."
That's a little bit of a stretch. How do you know what might, so, and there are a lot of friendly establishments within Simcoe and within Barrie that are great to go to. I know when Barrie Pride has their when the festival happens here in Barrie, there's many restaurants that turn out to be very friendly. And I mean, I don't know how many people come in for Pride festivities within, I don't know, for Simcoe FSP, if you know, does it increase, it increases awareness, but does it increase folks coming from other areas of Simcoe and even Toronto maybe, or I don't know how far, maybe they come up from the U.S. I know there were protesters from the U.S. last year, but at that Pride.
I think that big events, from what I see, so things like what Barrie Pride do, so the big festivals and stuff, that they definitely do pull people out, because I've seen friends of mine coming up from Toronto for it, and friends coming out from Washago and Wasaga Beach and whatever.
Right.
I don't know that so much the smaller events often do, so things like what FSP does. Oh, so many acronyms. Because our focus is on providing to the people that are already in those smaller communities and need it, so we do like coffee meets and educational settings, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, maybe they don't draw out people from a different community quite as much, but they do draw out people from our communities, so that's nice.
And really, that's what you're about, right? Is trying to make it happen for here and trying to support locally.
Yeah.
Do you work a lot with organizations within Simcoe County? If I'm thinking, well, let's say the Barrie Police Services, do you contact them? Do they get involved at all in what you're doing? Do you keep them abreast of what you're doing in terms of events, but also what you're looking at in terms of 2019 and some of the events you're going to be holding?
Yeah, so we definitely partner with a lot of different organizations throughout the year.
Why don't we just pick that up? I need to go to a break. I'm sorry. We'll pick that up. We'll pick that up with Keegan Hobson as soon as we come back from FSP. I'm back with Keegan Hobson, who is with FSP, Fair Taste Simcoe Pride, if you're just tuning in. And we've been talking a lot about what's happening in Simcoe, Simcoe County with Pride organizations and the need for them. And we've concluded that, yes, there is a need for them. And just before I went to break, I asked Keegan, what is the strategy in working with community in terms of, for example, the Barrie Police Services or the City of Barrie or RVH, for example, or anything that we've heard issues sometimes at RVH that the LGBT community is not exactly, in some instances, have not been well received. For example, misgendering trans individuals, which has been a big thing with some of it. I hear through the Gilbert Center that some trans folks have gone to RVH and have been misgendered, even though they've been asked not to be misgendered, they're still misgendered. So do you feel that, so would you be working towards that when you hear things like that? Or you get stories like that, it's more like it.
We do definitely get stories like that all the time, especially at events when people come out to our coffee meets and they'll sit down and have conversations with us about that. As an organization, we do occasionally reach out to those spaces to try to work alongside them, but I find that they are often already working with somebody on that. It's not that these places, so like RVH, for example, to carry on with them, they are working with people. They do have sensitivity training going on. They do have people coming in and offering those facilitations, but it's how fast are we seeing the results?
Right.
So it's hard to get in with them sometimes and to get involved with those organizations when they have people meeting those needs. So the best we can really do is just offer them space if they need to reach out to us for resources. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know the Gilbert Center has a program called Safer Spaces.
Yes.
And they do work, and they have worked with, I know they've worked with the Barrie Police
Yep.
Services.
For hours.
Yeah.
Like hours with the Barrie Police.
And they have worked with RVH.
Yep.
And I had two friends of mine who just, they had a surrogate and two same-sex partners, and had twin daughters born to them through the surrogate. And they went to register online. They couldn't do it because it was the father and the mother.
Oh, no.
And so, but if you went to a Service Ontario physical spot, they did have the more correct forms. But so many now are doing everything online that they were a little shocked. They thought, wow. So it's good to know that there's lobbying done on behalf of the LGBT community.
Definitely.
And just a more sensitive thing anyway, because even amongst the general population, husband and wife, a lot of it is just many people are not officially getting married. And so it's partners, and partner is a much safer word.
Yeah.
I always tell people, just say folks. If you don't know, just say folks. And if you don't know if someone's trans or not, and what does it matter?
It doesn't.
It does matter. Not that it doesn't matter for the trans community, because I agree, misgendering somebody is triggering. But if somebody is gay or straight or bi or pansexual, do you really need to know that?
I think it's up to the individual,
Yeah.
but yeah, like for some people there is power in that label, and for people knowing that label if it's a major part of their identity. Like for me, a major part of my identity is being like a queer and trans person, because that's the work I do and that's what I'm passionate about and that's what drives me. But yeah, it's not all of you. There's definitely other
there's
boxes.
more to you than just being trans or just being gay or just being
Absolutely.
bi. I mean, there's much more, because I remember a friend of mine said to at a conference, she turned to this woman and said, "And how long have you been straight?"
Yeah.
And everybody at the table went, "Now there's an interesting question, because many folks in the LGBT community firmly believe that's been there since birth, just like many of the trans community. I mean, people say, "Oh." I remember speaking to a gentleman, a young man who was like. He was like a real jock type guy. He was 29 years old. And since about 19, he felt there was a woman inside of him. And I remember sitting in front of him, he said, "There's a woman inside of me that wants out." And I've been holding it back for 10 years, and it became isolating, wouldn't go out to bars, wouldn't date, and it wasn't that it was there prior to 19, but he suppressed it, and at 19, when he started dating and he just felt not right and all this, and like that's like almost 30 years of holding back and mentally, emotionally, and physically draining, to the point that he almost became he was isolating himself, and basically went to work and went home and didn't go out. So that kind of thing is there. So it's a good thing that Fierté Simcoe Pride is an organization that at least can bring that type of awareness.
Yeah, we try really hard, especially within trans community, because a lot of our board members identify as trans, and so it's definitely a community we work really hard to work within.
So 2019, 50 years ago, I think it was June 28th or something like that, in 1969 in Greenwich Village in Manhattan. The Stonewall riots happened, and they say, or a lot of people look to that date and that year as the beginning of the movement that is now known as the LGBTQ.
Yeah, the modern pride movement.
Yeah, big pride movement. And it's been 50 years. Do you see us having moved the needle at all from back then? Because you still hear of confrontations between the LGBT community.
Especially with police, yeah.
Especially with the police, yeah.
I am unsure.
That's okay.
Yeah, like
We're just having a conversation, right? We don't have the answers, maybe.
Yeah, and obviously I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
I would like to think that we've moved forward in a plethora of ways. There's so many ways that we have made it so that life can be easier for people who are living maybe a not heteronormative lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I think that in some ways, it's not that we've taken 5 steps forward, it's that we've taken 1 step forward and 5 steps to the side. And I think that we still have a lot of those same violences perpetrated towards our communities. I just think it's a lot more insidious now, and there's a lot more gaslighting about whether or not it's even happening. And honestly, LGBTQ2 folks spend so much of their time having to prove whenever they face any sort of violence or issue that after a while it would get tiring coming forward with that, so you don't hear about it maybe as much as you would if people didn't have that desensitization to it.
The riots were in 1969 were brutal. I mean, people were hurt.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody was killed, but I can't remember. Do you?
I'm not 100%, but I know they were violent.
Let me just check that out while we're chatting.
Yeah, plenty were arrested.
Plenty were arrested, yeah, that's for sure. But I'm just wondering, it was against the police raid. Stonewall Rebellion actually was actually called too, were a series of spontaneous violent demonstrations, so it was quite violent, according to Wikipedia.
Oh, the most reliable.
What?
The most reliable source.
The most reliable. Against the police raid that took place in the early morning hours of June 28th, oh, I had that right, at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village neighborhood of Manhattan, New York. They are widely considered to constitute the most important event leading to the gay liberation movement and the modern fight for LGBT rights in the U.S. And Stonewall Inn, it was called. We homosexuals plead with our people to please help maintain peaceful and quiet conduct on the streets of the village. Wow. And to this day, outside the inn, there were 10 New York Police Department officers inside the inn, and multiple police precincts were around, and there was 1,000 inside the inn and outside the inn, and 600. So there was like almost 1,500 people involved. And then it says gay Americans in the 50s and 60s faced an anti-gay legal system. Homophile groups in the U.S. sought to prove that gay people could be assimilated in society, and they favored non-confrontational education, and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. And so it's all part of this thinking that there is in the States, like gay conversion therapy, which can you and it's still current in some U.S. states.
Yeah, we're still fighting
like
it everywhere.
beat the gay out of them. You know, I have a friend whose father tied him to a ladder in the barn and gave him a strapping because he found him in some kind of compromising situation with another guy, and he said, "I'm going to beat the gay." Literally, I mean, and I mean, you hear it and you say, "Oh, that didn't happen." But I have a friend who it happened to him, and his father literally strapped him, trying to beat the gay out of him, and he didn't beat it out of him. He made him much more willing to not go up against his father, but willing to he realized that he either had to make a decision to be quiet and go in the closet, and he decided to go in the closet and came out years later, only because, I mean, I don't want to get strapped again by my dad.
Yeah, no, unfortunately we do what we have to do to survive.
Yeah. So do you find, because you're a younger man, do you find growing up has it been, because you hear stories, do you yourself see 50 years ago that we still need, or we still are fighting, because it says fight, we still are fighting many of the same issues in 2019,
we
50 years later?
Yeah, we absolutely are. It's wild. It may look a little different, it may have a different name, but the reality is it's still the same insidious homophobia and transphobia. And it's just showing itself in different ways, whether that's through different legislation or policy or whatever you want to call it, it's still what it is.
So you're in Toronto more than you're in Barrie in terms of schooling?
Yes.
But you live in Barrie, so you're commuting every day?
Twice a week.
Twice a week?
Not too bad.
So your look is certainly when you move around Toronto as opposed to Barrie, do people stare? Do people ask you things? Or not that your look isn't great. I think I love it. I mean, if I was a lot younger, I might go for that.
I think in Toronto, responses are usually more like, oh, you look great, I really like your hair, is it natural? It's the most common, can I touch it? That's a weird one.
That is a weird one.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people just shove their hands in my hair. It's just not okay. But yeah, it's usually a more affirming or disinterest. Like people either don't care at all or they're like, oh, I like this aspect about you. Where in Barrie, sometimes it's, oh my God, that's really cool. I don't often see a lot of blue curly dyed hair, but yeah, sometimes it's definitely like you're the odd one out, getting weird looks when you go into a washroom type of thing.
Well, it's a decision, right, that you make that's personal.
Yeah.
But that's who you are, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's great. I mean, there's a program coming on television about American style, and how we dress is how we define ourselves, which is true.
It is.
How we groom ourselves, what we dress and how we dress sort of defines a bit who we are. You know,
Absolutely.
and you can always, dark suit and white shirt and gray tie, and we'll have a gray bow tie. But anyway, is sort of like indicative or reflective of our personality. And certainly your look is definitely reflective of your personality.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, so glad. Yeah. What is the plans then for Simcoe FSP, Fierté Simcoe Pride, for 2019 in recognition of the Stonewall riots of 1969? You said about our history, our future.
Yes.
Are there plans to sort of highlight that 50-year history within your own history of SSP?
Right. I think that we are definitely going to acknowledge those moments because 50 years since Stonewall, 50 years since partial decriminalization of homosexuality are both big, big movements that need to be acknowledged. And I know that our goal for 2019 is definitely to highlight the years here, like the years that our community has been doing this work as well, because it's not something we talk about a lot. We talk about all these famous names for people who definitely laid the legwork for everyone else, but what about the people who did it here? The people who started the grassroots organizations here, the people who've been working at the Gilbert Center since it was the AIDS committee, and it's honoring everything. We want to pull everything together so that we can see that people have been doing this work everywhere for generations.
Well, AIDS organizations came out of the early 80s with when AIDS was predominantly amongst gay men in those days anyway, and now it's not just gay men, but then it was, and AIDS organizations were grassroots organizations that came and evolved over the years, and thankfully HIV medication has gone from 12 pills a day to 1 for a lot of folks.
Yes.
And women represent about 25% of HIV positive folks are female. But in those days, AIDS service organizations were the Gay 2 organization back then, because pride committees were not really around in the early 80s as they are today. I don't think there was even a pride organization in Barrie until 2000 maybe, or
it would make sense, 2000.
Because your organization,
we're celebrating our 8th year, but our 7th year of being like an official organization.
So 2011, something.
Yeah,
like
because
that.
Barrie Pride was after.
Barrie Pride was after you or before you?
After. 1 year after. So they're celebrating 7 years.
Okay, and then recently Georgian
and then Georgian,
Muskoka, Barrie, Borden
Muskoka's
Pride
10 years.
Yeah, Muskoka's 10 years.
They're going on 11 this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Borden Pride is
very new, from what I understand.
Just 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, like it's a baby pride right now.
Yeah, it's a baby pride.
They're getting started.
Yeah, but it's not been 50 years for us.
No.
And for many years in Barrie, C'est La Vie was the go-to. The old Barrie Opera House on Collier, and then that moved over to Essa, 41 Essa Road, and it became what did it become?
Spotlight.
Yeah,
I remember Spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Not overage, of course, but underage nights that they used to host. Yeah.
And it is very important, I think, for our viewers to understand that a safe space for the LGBT community is important to have, and not that other establishments in town can't be safe.
No.
But to be who you are, and to have boa feathers, and to boas and our flags, the rainbow flag and the trans flag draped on these chairs, just to highlight the fact that we're looking at Pride as being something that we want to be proud of.
Yeah.
But we also want to support. And so there's been activity in Barrie over the years, and I know the current Barrie City Council just got elected in 2018. The latter part is very much an ally of the LGBT community. And I know I was telling Keenan Allen, we hope to see a rainbow crosswalk this year.
That'd be cool.
During any kind of Pride festivity, whether it be hosted by whoever, that we see something. I was in Charlottetown last summer, and in Charlottetown they had a flag. I took pictures of it, and I said, in Charlottetown.
Yeah, I see them every day in Toronto.
Calgary has them. Toronto has them.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just one crosswalk, just one. So we're gonna plug it, right?
Oh yeah. That would help. Be nice.
So you have some events coming up.
Yes.
I know you have dates. I can see.
Oh, little dates.
What's happening?
So these are actually, I had written out some dates just for things we had mentioned about, like WorldPride and Fierté Simcoe Pride. So for us, we don't have official dates, I believe, scheduled for our events, because it's not until the summer. But we run from the 29th of July until August 11th, and then WorldPride, run by Pride New York, is in June, which is exciting, and it's a full month, which we were talking about.
So that's a whole month, is it?
Yeah, I believe a whole month of events, going through the history and stuff, and then I know on the anniversary of, they're holding a big event. Yeah.
In New York.
Yeah, in Greenwich Village, I believe.
In Greenwich Village.
Yeah.
So that's going to attract a lot of people.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. I'm sure it's going to be large. Absolutely. Yeah, and then after that, it's pretty much just, we are super stoked because Canada Pride is happening officially. We had our first one by Fierté Montreal in August of 2017. And then we have another one coming up in 2020 by Winnipeg.
So Canada Pride is what, every 2 years?
Every two, I want to say, 17, 18, 19, 3.
So Canada Pride is well, it's national, but it moves from one city to another city. Montreal was last year, you're saying?
Yeah, they were the first hosts of Canada Pride.
Okay,
ever.
so that's really new.
Yeah, it's brand new.
Did you go to it, or?
Yeah, I was there.
Really?
It was amazing. They did a really, really good job. Big parties. Fierté Montreal always throws great parties. It was outstanding. And yeah, it's really cool. It's run by Fierté Canada Pride, which is an international group of Pride organizers who meet every year. And essentially we vote on who holds the next Canada Pride event.
We vote, so you're on the committee?
I'm not on the committee, it's members of the organization.
Members.
So there's a board, and then there's members. So we buy into membership, attend the conferences, and then we can vote on who holds.
So Canada Pride aligns itself with, there's an international pride?
Interpride, yeah.
Interpride?
Yeah.
And there's Canada Pride. So the U.S. has how many countries are involved in Interpride? Do you know? Or?
Ooh, I don't know off the top of my head, but Interpride's international, yeah. So it's absolutely everywhere. It's often been hosted in the U.S., but they're changing that now. The next one is in Athens, Greece, which is really exciting. That's next October. Yeah. Yeah.
So it moves globally.
Yeah.
So the Montreal one, that was
Canada.
That was just Canada.
That was Canada Pride.
Where was the last international Pride then? Do you know? Well, anyway, it was
Zurich. For some reason, my brain is remembering Zurich, and I could totally be wrong, but I feel like that's...
but it wasn't. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's every year?
Yeah, that's WorldPride. So that's what Toronto held a few years ago.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and that's why New York is holding it this year. Because
Toronto was, 2 years ago, maybe?
A little longer than that. I want to say 3 or 4.
Okay. I remember that, and the weather was great.
14? Yeah. No, it was amazing. It was so hot, though.
Yeah.
It was big.
Yeah, that's right. I know. And it was well supported.
Yeah. No, it seems like they did a pretty good job with that festival. The parade was behind, as it is every year, but other than that, it was great.
So I haven't heard anything what's happening in Barrie. in terms of what's going on this summer, but it's 5 months away, June. I mean, I know it's only January, but you know, January, February, March, April, May, June, like 6 months away. These things take planning. Do you see something different happening this year? Maybe more prides getting involved in terms of organizing and in recognition of what we've been talking about in terms of WorldPride 50 years ago. Not WorldPride, but
Stonewall.
Yeah, Stonewall riots.
I think 2019 will be an interesting year because I think I'm seeing a lot of strong alliances form between organizations.
Good.
And not that there was necessarily hostility there before, but just that I'm seeing a lot of organizations coming forward and saying, hey, I want to partner with you on this, let's do this, and putting out really, really good stuff for our communities. And so I really am hoping that 2019 will be a really big year of collaboration among the prides in Simcoe, because I think that that will really give us that push.
Yeah, and it would be good to see a unified front where all prides can come together, and allies, and sort of stand in solidarity in recognition of, yes, Stonewall, but in recognition of there's still a lot of work to be done, and there is a unified voice within Simcoe County, well, Simcoe-Muskoka, you know, not just, you know, and taking it in and being a part of it, and even sending down a contingent to Toronto, because I'm sure Toronto, I haven't heard what's going on in Toronto, but I know Toronto has always been in the forefront of aligning itself with anything current like that. So I'm sure 50 years of the LGBTQ2 community, it'll be marked in some different way maybe this year as well.
Yeah, probably, absolutely.
Yeah.
I imagine that almost every pride's going to be stepping forward to honor this in some way.
So when FSP does their, you talked about in August, do you have a parade as well, or?
No, we've chosen not to host parades.
Okay.
Years ago, we did a community survey, and we were seeing that people wanted events more than they wanted parades. So Barrie Pride hosts their annual festival, which is huge, and they get lots of folks out,
Right.
which is amazing. So it works out that we're able to kind of focus our attention more on our awards gala, which is one of our biggest ones, and our Trans March, which is our 4th annual one this year.
And the Trans March is so very important.
It is. It was one of the first ones in our area that we had
Yeah.
started 3 years ago, and it was big even on our first year. We had a bunch of people out, cars honking their support. It was amazing.
Because the trans community is still very much a new community in terms of awareness within Simcoe County.
Yeah, and that's what's awful about it, is that the trans community was the forefront of the Pride movement, and
Years ago, and it sort of got shoved
to the back.
to the back.
To the back.
Yeah.
It was more about gay liberation then. They were focused more on the gay movement, not so much the entire LGBTQ2 encompassing blanket. So yeah, I think that it is newer to have trans rights moved
Right.
to the forefront of
Right.
Pride movements here.
And I understand Soldiers Memorial is doing a trans hub
Yeah.
where they're focusing on trans health.
Yeah.
And a lot of individuals don't understand that trans folk have different health needs, different
Very.
concerns,
Yeah.
and want to be feel comfortable with their medical practitioner to talk about some of the issues that they're facing, and still amongst the trans community. I mean, you hear it. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. You still hear a lot about trans folks being murdered, particularly not just in South America, but in the U.S. Almost every day or every other day. I don't know what the statistic is. My apologies, but I know it's high.
It's too high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole notion of people trying to understand it. Nobody wants. I'm not a trans individual, but I would imagine that it's not that you don't want people to understand. You want people to appreciate the fact that you're an individual, not you personally, but they are individuals trying to get through life like everybody else as best as they can. And I understand that in Toronto or in Ontario, they may be starting to do confirming surgeries now in Toronto.
They do already.
They do already?
They have Dr. McLean in Mississauga, so I guess he's not in Toronto, but he's in Toronto.
They do top surgery.
Yes,
Yeah,
he does
yeah.
double mastectomy and breast implants.
Right.
And he also does other cosmetic surgeries as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's still very expensive, which is like,
If you pay out of pocket, it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
It's like $8,000.
is it that high? Right, and that's cosmetic in terms of feminization surgery, or is that just...
They just do, like, so they're a general cosmetic
Okay.
space. So they do like tummy tucks, and they do face surgeries and stuff. I don't know that they specialize in facial feminization, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if they offer
Yeah.
services. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
that's for another show.
Yeah.
But it's good to, you know, I'm really thrilled that you're doing the work that you're doing.
Thanks.
And the energy that it takes, because you're in school, you're in university. What are you taking in university anyway?
My Bachelor of Social Work right now, my second year.
So how many more years do you have? Like
2 more.
2 more.
Yeah,
But you're getting through it.
slowly but surely.
But thank you for your energy, and thank you for being a spokesperson for Fierty Spinkville Pride, because I know I've had Brandon Amiot's been on my show a few times too, and it's just great to see not just the energy, but the intelligence behind it. You're just not out there in terms of here we are, accept us, but you're actually engaging in intellectual conversations and in meaningful dialogue and having conversations that reflect who you are, but who you see yourself being in the future. And I'm glad to see that that's the theme, is the future.
Yes.
Because that's what people want to hear. Like, it's not day to day. There is a future, and we want to make it better for others coming along. Mm-hmm. I have my son is living in Vancouver, and he came out at 14 as a young gay man and moved to Toronto because he felt Simcoe was a bit difficult to live in for him.
Yep.
And so went to Toronto and then moved from Toronto to Vancouver. So I mean, it's good to see young men and young women who identify within the LGBT community, however they fit into that going forward. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you, and all the best with FSP this
Thank
coming
you.
summer, and with all your celebrations and events. And please keep me posted so I'll announce them on my show when FSP is doing something. We'd be
Awesome.
glad to make that known to the
Amazing.
viewing audience. And thanks again, Keegan.
Thank
and
you.
all the best with Ryerson and your studies as they come up. So until next week, thank you for staying with us for the hour, and look forward to seeing you again next Friday. Same time, same station.